sleeping down there, Safwan, and then we've heard recently in the last few hours, we've taken control of the city of Basra, and the 3rd Infantry Division made that dash through the desert, moved up to An Nasiriyah, crossing the Euphrates River there, capturing those bridges intact, and that set up the situation for the move on Baghdad further north. We've actually even heard some reports that there are troops and maybe some fighting going on up here in Najaf. And so that's the situation right now. We're well on our way to Baghdad.
Major, we'll continue to talk throughout the evening, and we continue now with NBC's David Schuster. He's at the U.S. Central Command headquarters in Qatar with what they're hearing about the fall of this key city. David, what do you know?
Well, John, there's every indication that Basra has fallen into coalition hands in the way that they wanted it here at Central Command, and that is through surrender talks with some of the Iraqi forces that were remaining in the city. There were 2 Iraqi brigades that had surrendered yesterday outside of the city. There was the 3rd Iraqi brigade, or what was left of it, inside. And General Tommy Franks at his briefing today suggested that coalition forces were simply going to sit outside of the city and wait and see what could develop. And so most of the American Marine contingent left. Left behind was the British 1st Armored Division, but they have apparently, in their talks with the Basra officials, but also with what was left of the Iraqi regular army there, they have apparently negotiated some sort of capitulation. It's not clear how many coalition forces have actually entered the city, and there are some fears that in Basra, like the problems at Qasad, that there still might be pockets of resistance that have to be cleaned out. But there's every indication here at Central Command that Basra has fallen into coalition hands in the way that Central Command had hoped for. The other component of Basra is that Central Command is hoping that when coalition forces do go into the city, there will be jubilation, that the troops will be seen as liberators, not occupiers, and that is the sort of image that they are very eager here at Central Command to broadcast throughout Iraq, hoping that that will crush whatever resolve is left of Iraqi soldiers elsewhere in the country. There have been lots of pictures from southern Iraq, especially, of thousands of Iraqis surrendering. These are regular Iraqi army soldiers. It's worth pointing out that none of the Republican Guard units have been engaged in battle yet so far. But nonetheless, here at Central Command and also at the Pentagon, they're very hopeful that these pictures will not only break the resolve of Iraqi soldiers throughout the country, but that it will also show much of the Arab world that the United States is being as humane as possible in this conflict. The problem that the Central Command may have with that, and the problem with the messages that are coming out of Central Command from this briefing room behind me, is that on Al Jazeera television overnight, they've been broadcasting some incredibly brutal video, gruesome video of some of what they claim are some of the civilian casualties of the bombings in southern Iraq. There's no way to corroborate the Al Jazeera report, but nonetheless, one should not underestimate the impact that this video may be having in the Arab world. It's a part of the world, of course, that's already inflamed by the Iraqi war, and the images are just unbelievable as far as what they've been showing in Al Jazeera, and that, of course, is something that here at Central Command, that's something they cannot control. John?
All right. David Schuster at CENTCOM. David, thank you very much. This story to report now. One of the 13 soldiers wounded in that grenade attack on the tented camp in Kuwait early Sunday has died of his injuries. And Time magazine correspondent Jim Lacey is there at the camp by telephone at Camp Pennsylvania. Jim, welcome, and thanks for joining us. And what can you tell us?
Hi. Just a quick update. In the last couple of minutes, they have backed off, saying that the soldier has died. So there is some debate now on whether that is a true statement or not. But there definitely was several soldiers seriously wounded.
Explain what happened in this attack.
As far as anyone has been able to piece it together now, one of the soldiers here, from an engineer unit that's attached to the 1st Brigade, stole or got 4 hand grenades and came to the brigade headquarters area and selected 2 or 3 tents that were known to have officers in them. And I understand that he said, you're under attack, and then rolled the grenades in. One of those grenades was a dud. 2 blew up in 2 separate tents. And there's conflicting reports on whether he also shot 1 or 2 of the soldiers that were wounded as they exited the tents. There was a lot of chaos and confusion. At the exact same moment that the attacks took place, the scud alarms here sounded, and a little later during the attack, about a half hour into it, the Scud alarm sounded again, and we were able to watch the Patriots, what appeared to be Patriots, engage in the Scuds on their way in. So there was the multiple, reacting to the chaos and confusion of the grenade attacks, followed almost instantaneously by Scud warnings and possible Scud attacks. And it was a long evening.
Did you hear the grenade attack, or were you asleep, or awakened by all this?
My tent is right beside the tent that was attacked. There was one female soldier. The tent on them was segregated, put divider in the middle, half females, half males, and one of the female soldiers in our tent was wounded by a grenade fragment. I had just gone to bed not that many minutes before, so the first explosion was just a wake up, and I was already standing up when the second explosion hit, and then as I was going outside, I heard the Scud alarms. So it was all in rapid succession. There was a lot of confusion on whether it was a Scud attack or or some sort of terrorist attack for only a couple of minutes, and I realized the explosions had come from behind me, so I walked over there, and when I arrived, there was two soldiers lying wounded outside of their tents, and several soldiers had entered tents a minute or so after, and so there was more wounded inside. As you can imagine, middle of the night here when it happened, there was a lot of chaos, confusion. I will say this, I noticed a young Army major and two young Army captains, and then both captains wounded, immediately took charge, started organizing things, one, getting the people treated as fast as possible, two, getting a defensive perimeter out there, and three, getting the accountability of everybody and everyone to see what happened, and that's how they finally noticed that it may have been one of their own that did it when somebody turned up missing.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds horrible, but especially horrible when it's one of your own.
Right, and he's taken into custody, and
did you see him?
Criminal investigation. I had just walked away from the area where he was, and then somebody said they got him, and I walked back, and he was already on the ground.
In fact, I believe we've got a picture of him on the screen now. We can't see his face, but we do have the picture of him we were taking a look at. You said you walked by and saw him?
Yeah, I was standing right there. There was a time photographer with me. I guess you have the pictures of him lying face down, handcuffed?
Actually, no. He's sitting with a tarp over him, I believe.
Oh, okay. So those are later pictures taken, but I saw him probably about 10 seconds after he'd been handcuffed. They were reading him his rights at that time.
Was he saying anything?
Initially, I hear when he was first confronted, he said he had done it, but they backed off and nobody questioned him, and the person who found him was very well versed in the legal exactitudes and immediately just put his pistol on, make sure he didn't do anything else, and proceeded to get help and get him his rights read before anyone asked him any questions. I don't know how much talking he's done since then, but he's in the hands of Criminal Investigation Division.
Did you get some sense of what was behind this?
We're able to say that the soldier has an Arabic name, and there's a lot of speculation associated with that. Most of it, I would say, is informed speculation. And the soldier himself had been, his compatriot said he'd been acting strange, doing a lot of pacing, not talking to anybody. And he'd been marked as insubordinate in the last couple of weeks, and his chain of command had decided not to take him forward when this unit moves into Iraq. So he was already on the stay-behind detail and being, loosely watched as somebody who's causing trouble, but no one expected this of him.
Give me an idea of how the whole mood has changed there since this happened.
Well, I would say that among the people directly involved, it's a lot more somber, but the most awesome spectacle is that we are now only a few hours later, and this unit is back to doing exactly what it was supposed to do according to the schedule. I can't tell you its future missions or what it's about to do, but considering the damage done by this gentleman, a whole bunch of what I would call magnificent officers have stepped up to the plate, and I would say this unit is now I wouldn't say back to routine operations, but it is definitely back on the course and schedule it had set for itself prior to this happening.
It bounced back. Now, you had mentioned that you had thought that one of the soldiers injured in this attack had died, but now you believe that's not the case.
I don't know what is the case. The Army here is saying it's not happened. I've heard several soldiers say it did happen, but the senior leadership saying that may not be the case. The soldier was evacuated. It's probably going to have to be broken from the one of the combat support hospitals.
If you can, give me some sense of the injuries.
I'd say from the soldiers I saw, 6 of them had relatively serious injuries, and at least 2 of them were very, very severe. Very severe injuries. I mean, they're going to be watched for a long time. One of them looked extremely severe.
Jim, you've been around this camp now for a while. What else have you seen? All I've been able to see since I've been here is, and I've written about it, and I don't think enough people in the U.S. can see it. This is a group of the soldiers here are average age of probably around 20. They are simply magnificent. They have been doing everything they're supposed to do in trying conditions, sandstorms, dust, wind, just someplace that none of them are familiar with being, with a lot of stress hanging in front of them of getting ready to go into Iraq behind the 3rd Infantry Division. And, I'm going to use the word for the second time in this conversation. What I have seen from these young men so far has been magnificent, and their reaction to what I saw last night and how they're carrying on today just reinforces that initial impression. Jim Lacey is with Time Magazine, and he is covering the sad story of one U.S. soldier who has been taken into custody now, charged or will be charged in the attack on some 13 soldiers wounded. It was a grenade attack at Camp Pennsylvania in Kuwait. Jim Lacey with Time Magazine covering that story and bringing it to us. Jim, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Bye.
We continue now our coverage of Operation Iraqi Freedom. Let's go to the very latest headlines. U.S. and British forces now control Iraq's second largest city, Basra. Allies captured the airport near Basra in a gun battle and took a bridge. Military officials warn there could still be pockets of resistance. U.S. intelligence indicates at least one of Saddam Hussein's top deputies is alive and commanding some of Iraq's military efforts, but senior officials say they don't have intelligence to determine conclusively whether Saddam or his sons are alive, dead, or wounded. A senior U.S. official tells NBC News the U.S. has fired some 1,000 cruise missiles at Iraqi targets since Operation Iraqi Freedom began 4 days ago. Another 500 weapons, including laser-guided bombs, JDAMs, television-guided bombs called AGM-130s, and British Storm Shadow missiles have also been used. And we remind you, we recap the latest headlines for you on the Iraq crisis 15 minutes at the top of the hour, at 15 after, 30 after, 45 after the hour here on MSNBC. You can also get the very latest anytime on the web. Go to iraq.msnbc.com for complete coverage, as well as the Target Iraq Interactive Library, including in-depth analysis, slideshows, and video. You'll find it all at iraq.msnbc.com. Let's check in with our listening post now to hear what's being reported by other news agencies around the world on Operation Iraqi Freedom. Here's MSNBC's Alex Witt. Alex?
All right, John, thank you so much. Hello, everybody. We start with news out of Gaza City tonight being reported by the Associated Press. Earlier today, Palestinians there crammed shops to buy Iraqi flags, pictures of Saddam Hussein, as well as American flags, which they proceeded to then set on fire at the demonstrations against the U.S.-led strike on Iraq. The Iraqi leader, of course, very popular in the West Bank, as well as the Gaza Strip, in no small part because of the more than $35 million that he has awarded to the families of suicide bombers. And in a display meant to show that Saddam Hussein's government is still functioning, the Arab Liberation Front, which is financially backed by Saddam, distributed $10,000 checks just yesterday to families who lost sons in the latest intifada. And then from ArabicNews.com, Kurdish reaction to reports that Turkish troops may be moving moving into northern Iraq. The Kurdistani national parties in Iraq said today they do not oppose the entry of Turkish soldiers into the northern parts of the country, but there is a catch as long as that entry is sanctioned by the United American leadership. Now, in that report, Kurdish leaders expressed concern that if Turkish forces come in without that support, it could cause, quote, grave problems in the region. And now from Australia's Herald Sun today, a troubling report about some captured Iraqis in the southern part of that country, that Iraqi soldiers in the country's south were found carrying new gas masks, certainly a sign that Saddam Hussein may still be planning chemical attacks. That information is coming from a British officer who said that dozens of masks were taken from captured Iraqis, but none of them had hazmat suits, something certainly the U.S. military will be looking into. And that is the very latest from the MSNBC Listening Post at this hour. Back to you, John.
All right, Alex, we'll be talking throughout the night. Thanks very much. Now, Americans exercised their freedom of speech today. Some of them did in large anti-war protests throughout this country. In New York City, more than 125,000 demonstrators packed city streets to show their opposition to the American-led military action in Iraq. With only 74 arrests made, the Manhattan March down Broadway was considered mostly peaceful compared to protests in San Francisco and Chicago earlier in the week. But New York City police did report that 12 officers had minor injuries and were sent to the hospital. Around the world, the anti-war movement gained some steam, even as explosions were heard in Baghdad. Here's Dateline NBC's Dawn Fratangelo.
Tensions were so high today in the streets of Oslo, Norway. Police dogs were used against protesters. In Lebanon, thousands marched with banners supporting Saddam Hussein.
I am proud to see so many of you out today.
And in London, nearly 100,000 anti-war protesters, including this Iraqi man.
They may win the war. Are they going to win the peace? And are they going to liberate Iraq, really?
This demonstration was being billed as one of the biggest ever during wartime in Great Britain. Still far fewer than the million turned out a month ago.
Opinion polls show more British, about half, now support the war, but not Margaret Sweeney.
We do not support the British troops.
You don't support the British troops?
No, they're doing, I think they're war criminals.
After the first wave of shock and awe against Iraq, even headlines in London reflected a deeply divided world, one blaring the coalition's success, another asking how many casualties the public can handle. In this Pakistani newspaper, President Bush was vilified as a vampire, the headline claiming atomic bombs were used on Baghdad. What you wouldn't have guessed had been besieged from most images on government-run Iraqi television today. For days now, with armored tank convoys dominating American TV, both the BBC and the Arab network Al Jazeera have devoted significant time to what Iraq suggests were innocent victims targeted in the bombings. This doctor telling how missile shrapnel injured civilians, including a baby. Day 4 of Operation Iraqi Freedom, filled with voices of protest, indelible images, and a world divided over war. Dawn Fratangelo, NBC News, London.
Now for more on the critical takeover of Basra, we're joined by Conan Nolan in Kuwait City. And Conan, what can you tell us?
Well, John, we're getting conflicting reports as to whether or not Basra has actually fallen. We knew going into, it's now early morning Sunday here, that the U.S. and coalition forces had taken a position around the city. There was some suggestion that they were going to leave it that way, that they didn't want to go into the city, really. They just wanted to move on. Now we're told that they've actually entered the city, but there are still pockets of resistance. And all along, we've also been heard, John, that there was a significant value to the possibility of using it for psychological operations, that if they did go into the city and they got the kind of welcome that the coalition forces were hoping, that they would send U.S. television crews and some of those embedded news crews into the streets to record that for broadcast on stations like Al Jazeera and other worldwide networks into the pan-Arab states, so that they would get some better public relations, frankly, and show the rest of the world what the Pentagon's been saying all along, and that is this is a liberation campaign. It's not a fight over territory or oil. But we're still undetermined as to exactly what the plans are with Basra. But we are told that the U.S. coalition has control of it
although there are pockets of resistance. John?
I know that there's been concern about air raids there in Kuwait. What's the latest on that? Did you have any overnight?
We didn't. It's been about 12 hours since we've had an air raid. I have to tell you, though, that there's a bit of a concern from some of the civil authorities here because there have been so many, unlike the Gulf War, where you actually had television pictures of Scud missiles coming in and Patriots blowing them up. We haven't seen anything like that here in Kuwait City. They've apparently had the range they've been targeting, obviously, some of the military camps west of here. But the concern from the civil authorities, John, is that people have given up wearing the mask. They've given up going down to the basement. When they hear it, they just wait it out. And they're a little concerned. They're a little concerned that people think that the threat is over when they believe it's a long way from being over. And although the U.S. and coalition forces have gained greater territory in the south, there's still a possibility that there could be some Iraqi missile artillery and batteries close enough to reach this city. John?
All right, Conan Nolan reporting from Kuwait. Conan, thanks very much. We'll continue to follow the situation there with Conan. In the meantime, let's turn to Iraq. And NBC's David Bloom is on the telephone now. He's with the 3rd Infantry, making his way across the desert. David, good day to you, and what can you tell us?
Well, John, we've been going for about 16 hours now, and right now we're still moving north with this tank and infantry task force. So what just happened in the last hour or so, John, was that we cleared what had been described as an airfield. It was probably an airfield only, in name only, but we came rolling through. There were reports that there might be Iraqi tanks and dismounted infantry there. Indeed, they found some Iraqi civilians, non-combatants there. There were reports that they thought that they caught glimpses of an Iraqi tank and BMP, the armored personnel carriers, basically heading away as they moved through. Basically, the theory of this large tank task force, and it's the only tank brigade in the Persian Gulf, is just to keep rolling because they've got their eyes on other larger targets. They're not going to get bogged down with little peripheral targets along the way. Their feeling is that if they go for the heaviest targets the Iraqi military has, then and if they can take those out in the days to come, that will go a long way toward ending this regime, which of course is the first stated goal of the United States in terms of this military campaign. Other than that, John, we're just in this large column, and we're way close to the tanks and the Bradleys now. We've sort of split off from the rest of the train. There are fuel trucks, fuel tankers with us, some medics. Pretty much this is what they're calling a heavy metal on the 2nd Brigade of the 3rd Infantry Division, and it just continues to roll north. John?
NBC's David Bloom is on the telephone there. And David, thanks very much. I'm going to tell our viewers that David normally doesn't sound like that. The satellite phone distorts his voice, and it was difficult to hear at times. So we thank David as he continues to make his way through the desert. Now, Saddam Hussein appeared on Iraqi TV today, but American officials think it may be an outdated video. The question is whether or not he's still in charge or alive. NBC's Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent Andrea Mitchell has the latest.
U.S. intelligence analysts are poring over the latest video of Saddam Hussein. 2 photo opportunities broadcast on Iraqi television tonight. For the 2nd night in a row, U.S. officials and outside analysts say Iraq is showing old tapes.
None of them had any indication of anything that happened since the first American bombing occurred. And this is very, very serious.
The question, where is Saddam Hussein? Why hasn't he emerged to prove his regime is intact?
If Saddam's still alive, he's losing grip on the control of the country because we're not seeing a coherent defense anymore. So it appears that his grip is slipping.
The direct attack on Saddam's palaces is the most dramatic evidence of an ongoing strategy to provoke a coup. Officials say they've been communicating with Iraqi civilian and military leaders for months, by email, cell phone, through 3rd countries like Jordan, even face-to-face contacts as recently as this week as bombs fell on Baghdad.
Those discussions, both with people in uniform and not in uniform, will continue in the hours and the days ahead.
Some of the contacts by special forces inside Iraq have already persuaded military units to surrender. The message to political leaders, they should also cut a deal now before it is too late.
U.S. officials say they don't know how to interpret the absence of information about Saddam, except to assume that he is already isolated and unable to communicate effectively. Andrea Mitchell, NBC News at the State Department.
And we continue our discussion about Saddam Hussein. Joining us now from Los Angeles is Basil Baz. He's a former CIA officer and the author of the Terrorism Survival Handbook. Basil, welcome, and thanks for being with us again.
Thank you.
First of all, what's your take on Saddam Hussein right now? Do you think he's alive?
You know what, I don't think we have any idea until we get eyes on and until we're able to do specific DNA. I don't think it'd be a little early to even give you an answer for that right now.
I mean, based on what you see, what's going on in Iraq, there's no indication that he's alive or dead. I mean, the U.S. may have more intelligence. What did you think of the target of opportunity attack? Sort of the first one earlier in this week, that apparently intelligence indicated Saddam was in that building. What does that tell you about intelligence?
It tells you we're doing a lot better job than we did earlier during 91. It tells us that our intel is pretty reliable, and we'll know exactly how reliable if, in fact, we get an opportunity to go inside that bunker and see what the damage was.
Well, I mean, there were a lot of bombs that hit that bunker. How are you going to determine whether or not Saddam Hussein was even in there?
Well, you'd have to have somebody on target to clean up, and then if there is
they don't
body,
have DNA, right?
Well, DNA, and a lot of people are asking, well, how are you going to know? You know, how do you know we're not dealing with a look-alike? You know, we had that same problem earlier with Osama bin Laden. We thought we had him. We did did DNA testing and found out that it was a close relative. In this case, what we could actually do is go to one of his palaces, maybe the one that he built after the form of Nebuchadnezzar's castle, and do something as simple as go to the drain pipes and pull up hair. And do DNA testing to get an identity on him from that point of view.
There are these reports that the U.S. is negotiating with some Iraqi leaders, maybe some military Iraqi leaders, about surrender, about the regime change. And if Saddam is still alive, first of all, I mean, is he really in power? How much control does he have of this country, just based on what we can see?
Well, it's starting to look like he's losing control. I mean, simply it looks like the lines of communication have been cut to some extent. However, there is a very interesting thing that we need to take note of, and I'm sure most of our military commanders have already looked into this, and that is exactly who is Saddam Hussein. We know that by the tapes we received that he is involved in a lot of kind of odd things such as channeling, and one of those things is channeling with Nebuchadnezzar, the Neo-Babylonian king. And so he either feels that he is Nebuchadnezzar or has some contact with that, and therefore we have to take a look at Neo-Babylonian strategy and say, could he possibly do something similar? For example, right now we're moving along, heading into Baghdad with some really good progress, but that is not to say that he would not go as far as using a strategy, something like waiting until all forces were in Baghdad, and at that time detonate chemical, nuclear, or biological weapons to really put us in a really bad position.
So you're not surprised that he hasn't launched a chemical attack or a biological attack yet?
Not now, not yet. Just knowing what we know about him and enough about his strategy and what he could do. I mean, you know, we're dealing with a guy that's he's pretty strategic. I mean, he's somebody to stand back and take a look at. So I don't think we need to underestimate